Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our African American Entertainment Executive Roundtable. Very excited to have all of you join. My name is Jaya Thomas. I am the founder of Diverse Representation. For any of you not familiar with Diverse Representation, I just want to take a very quick minute and describe what the company is. Diverse Representation is a fairly new company focused on increasing the exposure and the hiring of Black agents, attorneys, managers, and publicists working in the entertainment industry. So we provide the first ever comprehensive database of Black agents, attorneys, managers, and publicists. And we also host various events throughout the country and events like the one you are tuned into right now. If you are not following us on social media yet, our Twitter handle is DiverseRep, and our Instagram page is Diverse Representation. So very excited to host this event tonight, and we are partnering with University of Southern California's African American Cinema Society. I'm going to turn it over to Derek from USC's African American Cinema Society, and he is going to share a little information about the organization. Derek?
Hey, thank you all for joining us today. As Jaya mentioned, I'm Derek Arlington. I am currently a second-year MFA student at the Screenwriting School, the John Welch Screenwriting School at USC. And with that, I am also president of the African American Cinema Society and also the Black Graduate Student Network. So what we try to do on campus is bring things together. So bring different events together and panels like this, networking events, chances for screenings, and the goal was to have this on campus. We had to do it digitally today, but thank you so much to all our guests and to Jaya for transitioning to this kind of situation. And with this, the room we're in is really nice, but we could only fit maybe about 150 people. So in this way, we can spread it to even more folks. So hopefully when things turn around, we can have you guys come on campus sometime too. That'd be really, really awesome. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And before we jump into tonight's roundtable, just want to kind of share what how the flow of the conversation is going to go. So I'm going to be moderating the conversation, and I'm going to be asking the panelists a list of questions for the first 45 minutes. And then the last 15 minutes, we're going to open it up to you guys, the audience, the participants. You should see a questions box on your screen, so feel free to type in any questions you may have for our panelists, and we will do our best to get to all of your questions at the end of the panel. So let's jump right into it. First of all, thank you guys again for participating and joining us today. And my first question, and I'm going to start off with Christine. Can you tell us a little about your journey and how you ended up in your current position?
Oh, yeah. So I went to NYU. I interned all over the place. I started off in traditional television and unscripted for Food Network. Ended up at MTV, saw the future in some ways was in digital, and I just wanted to make sure I had that in my tool belt. So in my career, and then just ended up one thing after another, ended up at the Wall Street Journal. Was actually before the Wall Street Journal was at like a small publishing company called Roads and Kingdoms, and landed at the Wall Street Journal doing branded content for them. It was all digital. And then after the Wall Street Journal, launched a web series and then ended up at Buzzfeed. So it's been kind of like a full circle, I guess, in branded content, because I really started off at NBC in ad sales. And now I'm working closely with sellers, but on the creative side. So I just knew that digital in some ways was the future, and it was just something I definitely wanted to have in my toolkit. So that's how.
Awesome. And how about you, Karen? Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up in your current position?
Yeah, it's funny, I've been in animation now for like over 20 years, but at the time I was not sure where I wanted to fit in entertainment. When I came out here, I didn't get a film degree. I didn't have sort of the community of filmmakers. I was actually pre-engineering and then met engineers and realized that was not my tribe. And then when I came out here, all I knew was I wanted to make movies that really lasted, that were kind of seminal and just lasted for a long time. And I thought it was in live action, but I got an opportunity to be an assistant in an animation at Disney Pictures Animation. And that's when I really realized that animation was those kind of movies that I wanted to make, that they lasted for a long time. They were really kind of shaped our lives. And it was also very much story. I wasn't really kind of enamored with like being on set and kind of all the kind of glitzy stuff. I really liked story. And this was a place where felt very academic. It was something where story was really everything. And at the time, we kind of had to beg and borrow people to kind of be in that business because it was kind of niche and nobody really was thinking about it. But over the years, I really, kind of blossomed and really felt like that was my home. And thankfully, those movies kind of became more sort of, widespread and more mainstream and sort of all audience. And, and find myself, 20 years later, sort of, being a studio exec overseeing those movies.
And Prince, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up at Genius Productions?
Well, so when all I knew was I wanted to work in entertainment when I was in school. So when I was in undergrad, I ended up getting it. I was like applying for an internship at like all the studios, all the production companies possible. At the time, I ended up getting a call from Paramount Pictures, and ultimately I ended up getting an internship there. Kind of rose the ranks. Kind of started at the bottom first, intern, executive assistant, the normal, or at least the proverbial way that a lot of people come up in the business. Then I started getting a lot of development jobs from some of the execs I worked with prior. So after that, I kind of left for a little bit, and I was doing like just some independent work. So I was doing more than a book deal. I was doing some other monetization with talent and so forth. I didn't know if I ever wanted to work in the corporate thing again. And ultimately, this lawyer set me up, and he was like, "You have to meet with Marsai Martin, Josh Martin, and Carol Martin." I ended up meeting with them on the Blackish set. And since then, it's kind of just been flying with all our ducks. So it's been a fun ride. But I think it was just from the beginning, getting all that development experience under me, and then moving into a position where I could help them, take this company to where they wanted to take it.
Awesome. And how about you, Joy?
Oh, I feel like I had a little bit of a whirly-dirly route. I've always liked story. I've always been into television and film. I was like a latchkey kid, so that's what I did to kind of pass the time. But I never thought it was a job that you could actually make money from, so I actually didn't try to pursue it. I ended up going to New York and practicing corporate law for a bit. And while I was doing that, I had the opportunity to make a short film, and I kind of fell in love with the whole idea of it. I was challenged to maybe pursue it a little bit further. And so I ended up doing the only thing I know how to do, which is apply to school, and ended up at USC. And that kind of started my journey when I moved to LA to kind of start doing film more seriously.
Awesome. Can each of you describe what an average day looks like for you, and kind of what are some of your key roles and responsibilities at your respective companies? And Joy, I'll just pick back up with you and have you start with that.
Well, that's fine. I think that there's not a typical day for me. Each day really just depends on what our goals are for the quarter, for the month, for the week, for the day. And then I kind of work backwards from that. And for us, we're still fairly new as a company and establishing ourselves. And so with that, we're constantly thinking, okay, what are the things we want to put out? What's our brand? What does that look like? How do we want to grow? What's a smart way to grow? What projects should we use now? What projects are we going to aim for in the future? And what does that look like? How can we kind of build up a roster of talent that we can work with? Because, one of the beautiful things about working in this business is you have access to so much talent, and who kind of vibes with your vibe, what works for that. And so for me, that's a combination of meeting people for lunches, talking on telephone, reading a lot of different projects, whether that's books or articles or scripts. With that as well, I also like to give back. So sometimes I just meet with people that have questions and want to come up. I like to pay it forward because someone's helped me in the past as well. So my days kind of vary depending on what's the objective for the day or the week or the month. But that's kind of a generalization of some of the things I do. And, putting out fires, because those are always things that we have to deal with as well. Making sure that whomever you're currently working with is happy, and figuring out what your next project's going to be and who wants to buy it.
Awesome. How about you, Prince? What's an average day look like for you?
Well, I'm also
if there is such a thing.
I'm also echo Joy. I don't think that there is a conventional schedule with this. I'll tell you why. A lot of things we do is always development. So we're meeting with writers, we're meeting with producers, We're meeting with directors, we're reading scripts, we're finding IP, talking to agents, talking to studios, pitching projects, and of course trying to get ready to go into production on the films that we have and the TV shows. At the same time, having team meetings, right, with Marsai and her mom Carol and Josh, her father. So every day for us is a different type of day. And I'll tell you this, since we're getting calls and things shift all the time, from the communication we're having with all our stakeholders that are in our project, it's always a different, you know, what we even planned for the day ends up changing ultimately a lot. And I think sometimes we just have to learn how to move with the waves. And I think that's also what has made us so successful and be able to get so many projects off the ground.
Awesome. How about you, Karen?
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, there's no set to go to in animation, right? So I'm overseeing these movies. And when I started my career, it was just always in story meetings dealing with writers. But now I oversee the movies from the beginning to the end. So I'm in meetings from the beginning, if it's, you know, hearing pitches and meeting writers and trying to find, you know, new ideas, to developing these nuggets of an idea. You know, these movies take 3 or 4 years to make. So I'm working with writers, and then when we're in production, I'm, you know, in meetings, watching, reviewing ideas, hearing the storyboard artists pitch their story sequences. I may be in editorial, then I oversee through marketing and, you know, distribution. So I may be in meetings. You know, we have 2 movies that come out, one in September and one in April. And so they're in knee deep in animation. So we're seeing these meetings and doing reviews creatively. So it's really sort of every step of the pipeline of the process, you know, it's just kind of nurturing that project from beginning to end, and just meetings.
How about you, Christine?
Yeah, so my day can vary. My team pitches a lot, so it's reading over their ideas and providing notes. I've got a team of like creative directors, creative producers, and writers. So making sure that the pitches look right before they go out to brands, talking with our sales team, coming up with new products, meeting with our production team, making sure processes are working. When we are shooting, being on set, a lot of client service, all that stuff. So it can vary.
Awesome. So most of you just talked a lot about, you know, meeting with writers and producers and hearing pitches, things like that. How do you know when you've come across compelling content, and what sort of content are you looking for, and are your companies looking for? And how do you go about making decisions on which projects to move forward with? We'll start with Prince on that question.
Well, I think for us that we look for stories that have a clear point of view. I think Marsai as this young game changer in her own right, right? She's the youngest executive producer in the history of Hollywood. She's also the youngest with the first to deal with the major studio, which is Universal Pictures. And for us, we try to find stories of the same. We want to tell stories that we've seen in our everyday life, movies that have been made and so forth that just haven't had young Black girls centered in it. So for us, it's telling stories of people of color. It's making sure that the story also just has a strong point of view that actually speaks to the audience, but also is well structured, right? Like we look for something solid in the Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, how the writers are breaking it, and just a story that Marsai can speak to specifically. So in some type of way, that's whether it's going to be from us talking of who we're putting behind the camera or who's in front of the camera and how that is. So ultimately, we're just looking for projects that are fresh, that are new, that feel big. I tell you, just with the Universal deal, our main goal is to look for big theatrical projects. So things that have big set pieces, that feel huge, and things that we could take in there and sell. Now we do other projects outside of that as well for some streamers and even for some networks that we're currently doing things with. But ultimately, my main goal is for us to find things theatrically that work. So big, strong point of view, big set pieces, and I think that's a good start to at least be able to have a good conversation from.
Awesome. How about you, Karen? What type of content or what kind of projects do you usually find compelling, or what kind of projects are you looking for?
Sure. Well, the thing about animation is, you know, as soon as you say you're going to make a movie, you're talking about an 80 to $100 million movie. So, you know, we've got to make a movie that we know that can go toe to toe and is going to be a big hit. And so, you know, early on with animation, it was like trying to find a world or something that hadn't been done. So if, you know, Finding Nemo had been done, it's like, okay, you can't go in the water. Okay, can you go to Africa? You know, and finding these big landscapes. And that's kind of how we originally would kind of tackle it. Now it's much more difficult to find something you haven't done before. So we have to really figure out both where it is something that feels compelling and unique and that you can really own this environment in some kind of way. But certainly point of view and authenticity is much more important now. Like, you know, Into the Spider-Verse is a perfect example. We've seen a few Spider-Man movies, but, you know, if you kind of come in and you have a different lens, then all of a sudden it's a completely different thing. And so I'm really excited about how just point of view and authenticity can sort of have a new layer for animation that hasn't been seen before. And so that's what I look for. Does it speak to me? Does it feel big? Do I feel like I can go toe to toe with a Marvel movie? No one can go to toe to toe with a Marvel movie, but I try. You know, but then it's got to sort of, you know, speak to my heart in a way that I feel like the kinds of movies, it used to work that if it was just for kids, but we can't do that anymore. So it's really got to kind of speak to everyone. And I can, you know when you see it.
Yeah, awesome. How about you, Joy? What kind of projects, you know, usually stick out for you, or, you know, is your company looking for?
Well, we right now, our kind of brand is comedy with heart, right? We want to make you laugh. We want to make you cry. We want something that kind of speaks to the zeitgeist of what's going on right now in the world. What do we want to say about that? And for us, it's like what feels authentic to us, right? So Tracy and I have very similar sensibilities. And so we really just kind of talk to each other about what feels authentic to us. We think everyone has a story to tell. So we think there's millions of stories out there. I mean, are they all original? That's maybe not, but how you enter into that story, like the particular point of view, as Prince said, is very, very important. And ultimately, it comes down to us about what feels right in our gut. Why do we like this? And what do we think it's saying about what's happening now in the world, this human condition? Even if it's like a small nugget of it, what is it saying about today?
Yeah, before you move on, and I was
Awesome.
going to jump to Joy said exactly that. I think that end was also very important what she said, because that's also what we look for is what are you actually trying to say to the world, and I think that that's very important. And hopefully we get that from the character's point of view ultimately. But I think one of the big things is making sure that we're actually saying something that means something.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then, Christine, at BuzzFeed, do you ever hear like outside pitches, or, you know, most of the projects you're working on from internal producers, writers?
Yeah. Oh, so, well, since I'm like on the kind of the advertising branded content side, we don't really hit that way. We're more pitching brands. And so, but we do have amazing verticals like Cocoa Butter and Peril Lake, which have very strong identities. And Alexis Tirado is someone who leads Peril Lake, and Ashley Jones is someone who leads Cocoa Butter, and they're doing like a fantastic job of sharing about, like, you know, Latinx communities and the diversity in that, or the African American community and the diversity in that. So we have a ton of internal producers and on-camera talent who kind of encompass BuzzFeed and our mission of like spreading truth and joy through their various identities.
Awesome. And I'm going to stick with you for this next question, Christine. What are some of the biggest opportunities you see right now for Black writers, producers, directors, and talent?
Oh, that's a loaded question. On the digital side, I think that is a big question. On the digital side, I think the amazing thing, and I'd say especially for like BuzzFeed, is like, you know, our budgets aren't huge. You know, it's not like Karen, it's not like Prince, it's not like Joy, where it's like you guys are dealing with massive budgets. Ours are a lot smaller, and so you can take bigger risks. Like if something doesn't work, you can pivot fast. And I think the amazing thing about digital and for writers and directors and producers is like you can get your stuff out there. Like you can raise some money and you can have your voice heard online quickly. You can build your own audience, which is amazing. And you know, the stakes aren't as high. If something doesn't work, you can change it, do something new. So I think just the ability to you know, crowdfund or get your voice out there based off of all these different platforms, you know, the BuzzFeeds will come. I know a lot of our producers and some of our on-camera talent had a following, and then that's how they ended up with us. Some people are like homegrown talent where they may have worked in like, you know, strategy, but they had a certain vision. Or, you know, Curly is one of our big Paralight creators. He started off as a receptionist and just is like one of our stars. So I think it for people who want to be on camera, people who want to be producers, like there's just tons of opportunities out there.
Awesome. And how about you, Karen? What do you think are some of the biggest opportunities right now for Black writers, producers, directors, and talent?
I think, you know, from the audience, then the market is really showing that authenticity, and it's kind of what we've been talking about, is really key right now. We need it. You know, that's what people are asking for, so the buyers know that that's something that has to happen. And so I think that provides a real opportunity for Black writers to get in and, you know, and really just show themselves and be their true selves and really bring a point of view that hasn't been out there enough. I mean, everyone of color, every diverse voice right now, I think it's in huge need. And so I think where maybe in, you know, other eras, people sort of had to figure out how to fit in and assimilate. Now it's really about being true. That's where the money is at. And, you know, I think it's a great lift up for them to really, you know, just, you know, work on their craft.
Awesome. How about you, Prince? What do you think?
Well, I think this is just an extremely important thing. I think it's shifted a lot. I think now there's more opportunity for African American or people of color, writers, directors, and just creatives in general. I think we like there's more talent-driven production companies. I mean, take Joy here with Tracy Oliver, Issa Rae, Lena Waithe, Michael B. Jordan, just to name of course, Jordan Peele, who's over there, you know, Universal with us. Like, it is so many people that are creating content now, and we're starting to take the power back to where now we're using our platforms to be able to create and make sure that our stories are being told in a big way. And I think that one thing that was important to Genius, which a lot of people know, like we do a lot of writers brunches because we want to bring writers together. And when we bring the writers together, we're also bringing executives from Paramount Pictures and Netflix and different places, because we want everyone to have those opportunities to be heard. But also, compared to even what it was 10 years ago, it's been a big shift because there's more opportunities now than ever. There's more streaming, obviously way more shows on TV. There's way more areas to be able to get your content seen. And that alone has led to more writers and more programs like obviously what you have, Jaya, with diverse representation, which is allowing people to be heard and seen who were not heard and seen before. And I think that's something that's starting to grow. We still have a long way to go, and no way am I trying to say that we've made it, but it's actually been a huge shift in what it used to be in this business.
Hey, I completely agree. Joy, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'd like to echo what everyone said. I think there is a lot of opportunity now with all the different places to show your content. It allows for more kind of nuanced voices. And I think when you have that space for a nuanced voice, it really is an opportunity for African Americans, for people of any background, to kind of really kind of hone into what about them they like, what about them makes them special and unique, because we all have it. And then you just kind of stick onto that and you use that, and that really becomes who you are. And funnily enough, if you really hone into what that is about you, someone else will connect to that. And if they can connect to it, I think that that really builds, and that is what brings people in. Besides what everyone said, and maybe they did say it, so forgive me if they did, I think it's also important, and I think it's very good to kind of build up, right? Like build up for new and emerging talent. If you have the space in place, like try to reach back and build them up, because that creates a pipeline to keep going. When, you know, years ago, that wasn't always necessarily the case, and it's not where it needs to be, but if we all are committed to it, I think that will make it even better, like 10 more years from now or 10 more years from then, where maybe, you know, and this is a little bit cautiously optimistic, maybe this isn't a question as much anymore because we're all over the place. They're like, well, how can we get rid of you? So that's really what I'm looking for, and that's part of kind of the goals of what we want to do.
Awesome. So all of you are currently in amazing positions within the entertainment industry. What do you feel specifically separated you from the pack of other hardworking individuals? And Karen, I'll start with you.
I don't know. I mean, I have a very high tolerance for being uncomfortable. And I think I was the only Black kid in my school in Dallas, in a private school for a long time. So I felt like I was, you know, it didn't even occur to me to kind of think about how I really felt for way too long, which is a whole nother conversation. But I think that that made me kind of keep my eyes on the prize. Like I just really would focus on what I was trying to accomplish. And, it didn't matter how difficult it was. I don't think it registered to me that there are easier ways to do things, or there are ways to be comfortable. And, comfort was never really a part of my question. I just didn't even think about it. I just wanted to focus on what I wanted to do. And I think that, that served me. I mean, there's a lot of bumps and turns in our business, and everybody is, wants to be there. And if you have to be comfortable, there's different ways to be comfortable. And, because it never occurred to me, I think that's what made me persevere and keep going.
That's amazing. How about you, Christine?
I'm trying to think. What separated me? I'd say I took the hard projects, and I took some really challenging things in my career that I think other people may have shied away from, that just gave me certain tools and certain things I could learn on the job that then I could apply somewhere else and talk about. I can think about definitely certain things at the Wall Street Journal that I took that were challenging, big projects that just kind of separated me from a few people. So I think that's for me. It's like I leaned into the challenge.
Awesome. How about you, Prince?
I think for me, it was just finding my own voice. It was being authentic to your own voice. I think sometimes when we get into a certain job, you kind of become a mixture of who you're around, and that you have to always be a certain way. And sometimes your voice sometimes becomes more silent. And I think that that's one thing that aligned me so well with Genius was I think we learned that despite, like, a lot of people even coming into Genius for certain things, for our whole Genius team, it was like, well, you guys shouldn't, like, this doesn't typically happen, or this isn't how it works. So when we were able to break some of those molds by actually doing it, by getting the first big deal, by doing all these other great things, we kind of broke that mold. So I think it was realizing that the power is in us to decide what this is going to look like, and we weren't going to let someone else tell us what we could or could not do. And by the way, that made a huge difference in how far we've been able to go with Genius Productions. So I think for me, just being aligned with Marsai, who also just speaks her voice. I mean, she is authentic to the core, and so are her parents. I mean, Josh and Carol, they are the same. So for me to be here, it's just a perfect alignment of our sensibilities and the way we think. And when somebody tells us no, we're like, oh, no, we're going to find a way to actually do this, even if we have to do it our way. And I think that's separated us from a lot of and separated me from a lot of people that were just like, no, this is the way it normally goes. Well, we're here to change that. If it was always normal, there wouldn't be groundbreakers and ground shakers, and that's what Marsai is, and that's what I represent now, and I think that's who I am.
Awesome, I love that. How about you, Joy?
I have to say, I wasn't afraid to jump out of the plane, I think. And what I mean by that is when I came to LA, like I'm from the East Coast, I'm from Long Island. My now husband, who was just my boyfriend, I was like, goodbye, I don't know, maybe I'll never see you again. All my friends and everything that I had at my core was there, right? And I left a great job, that I've been working years for, to move and be a student in another city. And I mean, I cried my whole first year in LA, like every day, and I hardly cry. And I wanted to leave a lot. And I hated it a lot. And I think I hated LA full stop for the first 5 years I was here. But I refused to leave because I'm stubborn. And I think that kind of helped me, just being persistent and just staying, just keep trying, just keep doing, running into failure and not being afraid of it, getting up and asking for some more. I think some of that is kind of why I was able to kind of keep going and be where I am. And then just finding people that really align with your thought process. Like, I think that work-wise, like how we work and the things we want to do, Tracy and I are very aligned, and that just made sense when we kind of came together and I came to work with her. I think once you know who you are and when you stay there, you'll find your people, and then you realize from there you really grow.
So true. So my next question is a very big question. So I'll just, let you guys answer it how you see fit. But my next question is, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen or experienced as Black professionals working in the entertainment industry? And I'll start with you, Joy.
I would say not being taken seriously. not having my voice heard, being ignored, when I've been in places and spaces where I've had more experience, I've been more knowledgeable. And in the beginning, early on, and I'll say this even outside of entertainment, you know, when I was doing law and things, when you're younger, when you're newer to a space and you feel uncertain, you tend to shy away when you're challenged, and just trying to remember not to do that, to kind of lean into the knowledge and the base that I've built, to have faith in that, because you don't continue to survive in this world if you don't have a knowledge base somewhere, and really leaning into that and being able to use that and utilize that, and then speak up when I need to and when I can, and just say, listen, I will be heard, and you will listen to me. And if you don't like it, you know, we can change this narrative, but ultimately I'm going to win at the end. So just really kind of sticking with that and leaning into that and believing that. And that was my biggest challenge.
How about you, Prince? What have been some of your biggest challenges as a Black professional in this space?
I think it's always getting, like, one thing about it, and that's why it's great to have executives like Karen, obviously within the studio system, that are able to make changes and be able to hear our stories. I think they just obviously did that with Hair Love. But I think, in generally speaking, a lot of execs in the room, we don't have too many people of color that sometimes hearing our stories. So sometimes when it comes to presenting some of the content that we want to produce and address, some people don't always get it, quote unquote. So I think for us, one of the largest challenges is having other people that we build in the pipeline to be able to take some of those studio positions and be able to get to those positions to where they're making these decisions on what's actually getting made and what's actually being produced. Because if we have more diversity in the room, we have more people that's going to understand what's happening. And I think for us, that's one of the greatest challenges, but it's also one of our greatest, I mean, it kind of goes both ways. It's also one of the greatest opportunities, because we're also in there trying to educate on our stories and the stories that we want to be told from the stories that we want to tell.
Awesome. And how about you, Karen? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, from the studio side, generally, I was the one that was the only one, you know, in the room. It's like, one is enough. We're not going to, you know, have more. And I agree with you, Prince, that you really need to have more diversity, need more representation on that side, because, again, like Joy said, you know, even on the studio side, when I was the only one and I was at the beginning of my career, one, they were always looking at me like, okay, is this offensive? Or, you know, it's like I'm the one that they go to, but and maybe they asked and often they didn't, but I was, you know, really trying to find my voice when I felt like there was something that was wrong, you know, to be heard and, you know, and taken seriously. And that took a journey. It's like, now I won't be denied, you know, but before it was really hard. So I feel like even then, even as, you know, I'm executive vice president, and I still find moments where it's still hard to reflect a position and be the only person in the room, you know. So when I'm intersecting with marketing and other people, there's more people of color that are part of the group, it's so much easier. And it's like, it's a reminder, you know, when other people are not alone, it's just so much easier to be able to speak. So when you're by yourself, you have to be that much more fortified of your position, and people don't always want to hear it, but you just have to know that you know, that you need to just stay strong, and that you're not only just speaking for yourself, but you're representing all the people that are not in the room and can't be there, you know.
Definitely. And how about you, Christine? What have been some of the biggest challenges you've experienced as a Black professional in this industry?
I think similar to Joy, was like finding my voice earlier on, knowing that pushback is okay. You can say, like, politely, like, I actually disagree with that. You can pull somebody to the side afterwards and say, you know, here's where I found an issue with something you may have said, or here's how something could have been framed differently. I think identifying allies is really important, especially when you're the only, and encouraging them also to speak up. You know, it's like, I can't be the only one all the time, and you can also say something, especially if I'm not there. So yeah, I think those have been some of the biggest challenges.
And so we have a handful of students, college students, grad students, who are joining us today. And one question that a lot of them would like to know is, was your college experience helpful in preparing you for the entertainment industry? What advice would you give to those currently in whether undergrad or grad school And for Joy specifically, who I'll start with, who graduated from USC School of Cinematic Arts STARC program, can you speak a little to that experience, please?
Well, I had a great time there. When I was there, you wouldn't have thought I had a great time because, like I said, I had given up money and a life. And so I think for the first year, I was a little bit miserable, but I realized that I went there specifically to learn the business. I purposely chose the STARC program because I wanted to be on the business side. I wanted to kind of learn how it all came together. And I think that really set me up for that. Plus, frankly, I met a lot of good people through the school. I met a lot of, I met wonderful people at the school that have gone on to do wonderful things. I mean, USC has a very vast and diverse network, and being able to tap into that has always been helpful. It's something that kind of gives you a little bit more when you're unsure and you're starting out and you're like, but at least I went here and I got this training. I don't think you necessarily need to go to film school. And I hate to say that. I mean, it's expensive. I don't think you necessarily need to go by any means. But for me, I was never going to make the leap from New York to here if I didn't have that as a base for myself.
Awesome. And how about you, Prince?
I think for me, so I actually have a master's in business, and my main thing was that I always thought that I just wanted to move up the corporate ladder and then one day run a studio or just run a entertainment type business. And I think ultimately, the school and you going to school is 100% going to open up doors. It's going to allow you to use that as a stepping stone to get in rooms that you wouldn't have got in. Ultimately, maybe whether that's an internship, whether it's assistant, whether it's starting off in the business or whatever you do, in rooms that you might not have been in. Or been able to get in just literally, maybe even sometimes on your own merit. So I think that sometimes that opens up the door. But I also think that you have to know that school is the gateway. For me, I always see it like the way we might see some of the development of a script. I see it as an outline. Like you have certain things that you could follow, but you can always go back into the outline and make changes before you get to a script. And I think that it's important to know that even though you're given some type of you're giving theories and you're learning all these different people that have done things that a certain way, I think it's important that you find your own way. And that's the one thing I took away. So school helped me open the door, but I think me being able to expand my mind on what I could do just as an individual helped me expand me in the world of entertainment. And from a business major to entertainment, it was a huge shift because I had to learn film, learn how all these deals work in syndication where I started from the ground up. And just wanting to learn it and having a passion for it was one of the biggest things that made me successful.
Awesome. How about you, Karen?
Yeah, I'm envious of the people that did go to film school, and because I do agree that it would have. I was pre-engineering and I got an accounting degree, which I've never even thought of using. And so I think that the basis you have of networking, that I see people that have that through college and just the experience, all that stuff, would have been great, and it was much harder for me trying to kind of build that base up and coming to California with not knowing anybody without that. But that said, everybody's journey is different, and you just figure it out as you go. So it shouldn't be a detriment if you don't do that or you don't discover it till later. But certainly, I would have benefited if I could do it again. I would have focused on film earlier so that I could really use that as a basis and kind of find my tribe there.
Awesome. And how about you, Christine?
And so whether or not college helped me out in my career or going to NYU?
Was your college experience helpful in preparing you for what you're doing at BuzzFeed now, or what advice would you give to students?
I also think my experience at NYU, it did from like a social perspective. Like I loved NYU, and I think being in New York, it gives you this hustle. Like you kind of come in and you hustle and you push, and it's competitive, and it's you have to go after your classes, you have to go after your internships, which really prepared me for then going into the real world and like being really proactive because I was surrounded by all of those people and my friends were just like that. So from a social perspective, yes, I studied journalism. I think some things with journalism and Africana studies, like I've used in my job, but not that much of it. And BuzzFeed actually was launched I think the year I graduated, and it was really small, and so it's just kind of grown. So digital wasn't really that big when I graduated college. And it's something I kind of fell into, but I think just from my personality, yes, NYU definitely helped shape who I am.
Awesome. And I have two more questions before I turn it over to questions from our participants. My next question is, what is the one piece of advice you would give someone looking to work in the entertainment industry? I will start with you, Karen.
I would say just be honest with yourself, and you have to do it because you have to do it. Honestly, it's got to be something that is so burning inside of you that you couldn't do anything else, and you'll find out, because once you start meeting those obstacles, you'll either do what everybody on this panel did, is just not give up and just keep going despite, whatever obstacles that are there, or you'll realize, what, I'm doing it for the wrong reasons, or I'm not, or maybe you'll find, oh, I thought I wanted to be an actor, but I really want to be a writer. Or, you really have to just have that inside you and listen to yourself. Obviously you'll take feedback and all that stuff, but like, there's got to be something that's burning inside of you, and just listen to it.
Awesome. How about you, Prince? One piece of advice.
I'm gonna also echo Karen, because I always think about this too, because today, so Bob Iger's masterclass, he quotes Shakespeare when he said, "Be true to thyself." I think that's what this ended. That's what it takes to make it now. I think it's a certain authenticity to yourself. I think it's you being able to have your own voice, and you being able to speak to where people could actually want to listen and want to hear what you have to say. And for us, at least from the position I sit in, that's the most important thing. I love hearing people's stories built into the stories they want to tell. I love to hear people's experience built into the stories they want to tell, or even experiences that they've heard from their friends, or from just what has become a part of them from living. So I think an authentic voice, finding your true voice, and not being afraid to have that. I think it in today's world, I think it's something that is very well appreciated.
How about you, Joy? One piece of advice.
I would echo both what Karen and Prince said. I think the other thing that I would probably tell anyone in this position is, it's hard. Run toward, this sounds crazy, but run towards failure. Because I think you have to do it a few times to be able to get better at it. But if you're constantly afraid of that, I don't think you'll really take the risk you need to take to be able to go to the next step, to the next level. That'd be the thing I'd add to what they've said, but everything that they've said.
And how about you, Christine? What's one piece of advice you would give?
Just staying open to opportunities, because you never know what you might learn from something that doesn't seem like it might be the direction you want to go in, or the right job for you. I think there's certain things where I'm like, I learned so much from that, and I never would have guessed, or I've met these like phenomenal people. So I think just being open.
Awesome. And so before I turn it to questions from the audience, how can everyone who is tuning in today support the work that you guys are doing? Is it something people should be tuning into, or following you on social, or going to your website? And what ways can we support everything that you guys are doing right now? And I'll start with you, Joy.
Oh, there's a couple ways. I produce an indie film. If you're stuck in the house right now, which hopefully you are practicing your social distancing, you can watch Premature, a film that I produced. It's on video on demand right now, and you can check it out. Also, if you are a up-and-coming comedy writer, you should, Tracy and I have partnered with BET, and we have a contest running right now that ends this month. And you can submit a half-hour comedy script. It's Project Create, CRE8. So it's bt.com/CRE8. And you can go there and submit. Good luck to you. We're looking for the next comedy voice out there. So hopefully you guys, anybody out there that's a writer has something, this is a chance. So check it out.
How about you, Prince?
I want to say, make sure you follow my social media. No, I'm joking. Look, like at the end of the day, I think it's really cool that, number one, that most people want to be either creators, writers. We're always looking for the people, not just obviously that are doing creative, but are also doing things, whether it's legal, whether it's finance, whether it's different places that can obviously benefit us. So I would just say, keep going, keep creating, keep telling the stories. There will always be opportunities at Genius. Again, like just in full frankness, like there is a process for submitting things, because there are some legal things that are outstanding. as a full functioning company, but we always want to hear ideas. We always want to hear other people tell us stories that hopefully we could turn into something big. And we just love to meet people. I'm open to always meet people, talk to them, have a conversation, no matter who you are. And I think that is fully open. So just know you can reach out to me. I'm available at least for a little bit of a conversation, and hopefully I could be helpful in some type of way.
Awesome. How about you, Karen? How can people who are tuning in, how can they support the work you're doing?
Yeah, well, before the work, supporting the work, I echo Prince. Like, I'm looking for new voices. You know, I'm in animation. I'm always trying to, seduce people who hadn't thought about animation to just think it's just a medium. So you shouldn't feel like you come in and if you didn't go to animation, if you're not an artist, that you can't, really participate. I'm looking for voices, and my partnership with Matthew Cherry on Hair Love is a perfect example. He'd never done animation before, but he just had a story to tell. And so I'm always looking for more people that want to do that, and we can surround you with people to tell the story. There are ways to legally submit and all the things Prince said, but I'm still, the door is open. But we're excited about what Sony Pictures Animation is bringing. I'm very proud of, Into the Spider-Verse and what they did. I watched from the side, but I'm very proud of the work and the diversity that they're doing on that movie. And there's more to come. There's a lot of, I can't announce it yet, but I found our first Black female director in animation, who comes from live action, but the same as Matthew, we're really going to bring her in and surround her, and she's amazing. So I cannot wait to tell you about that. But we've got a couple of movies coming out. There's a movie called Connected that comes out in the fall that Lord Miller, who executive produced Spider-Verse, executive produced this movie. And then I have a movie called Vivo that Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote the music and is starring in, and that comes out in the spring. But yeah, look for animation, and Hair Love has a future as well that we're too early to talk about, but it's coming too.
Awesome, and congratulations on everything. How about you, Christine? How can we support you and the work you're doing?
Yeah, we're always looking for creative directors and directors who have branded experience or branded writers. Always take a Buzzfeed quiz, watch Buzzfeed videos. We love views. And support our channel.
Awesome. Okay, well, now I'm going to bring back Derek. We have a little over 10 minutes to get to some of these questions from the audience. We have a lot of questions, so I apologize in advance if we cannot get through all of them. But I'm going to hand it off to you, Derek, to take the lead on some of these questions we're getting from the audience.
For sure. And thank you for taking these audience questions. And the first one we chose is, what advice would you give to someone making a career switch from business PR to the entertainment industry, hoping to work their way up? And do any of you guys have would like to tackle this question first? Christine, looks like you're nodding.
Yeah, I actually, I know someone who did that. She took a very low paid free job in PR supporting like an independent web series, independent films, and she was able to leverage that into then an entertainment PR role. So there's always I feel like independent producers who are like, I just need a PR person with that experience who might not have deep connections, but are just willing to help me out with my social or whatever, who'd be willing to take you on. So that's a good way.
Anyone else want to chime in on that? All right.
I mean, I can just a little bit. When I was trying to figure out how to make the leap over here, I tried to meet with people and just bend their ear, ask a few questions. Like I would follow up and say, hey, how did you do this? What did you do? And then I would always ask them if they wouldn't mind recommending 2 or 3 other people I could talk to. So that just kind of helped me kind of build a group. And once you stay in somebody's mind, if opportunities kind of come up, they might think of you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Anyone else have a comment on that?
I echo both of them. I mean, for sure, I echo both of them.
Awesome. All right, our next audience question is, for Black screenwriters, what are the best writing programs you'd recommend entering, if you guys have any suggestions?
That's a great question.
I think there's one called
that one.
Isn't there one called Writers on the Verge that's pretty good?
There is. There's quite a few programs. I'm only going to answer this in a general, more broad type standpoint. I've seen great writers come from all different types of programs, all different types of places, all different types of things. So you got to just find what works for you and where you can find what you need to learn within that program. So really, you have to do some research yourself. You probably need to talk to other writers. You could probably reach out in so many other ways. But just from what I've seen, where some great writers have come from, they're from everywhere and from all different types of writing programs. So I think, obviously do a little bit of research as well, where other writers that you might appreciate some of their writing have gone and have come from. But again, I've seen people all different walks of life come from all different types of places there.
Fantastic. I really like this. Does anyone else want to tackle that question before we move on to the next one?
The Echo Prince.
Yeah, there we go.
I really like this question, and it kind of hits a wide variety. It seems like this person did a little research. This person said, "Thank you for all your participation today. Per my research, I believe all of you started off as interns in the beginning of your careers. What were your biggest mistakes as an intern that you ultimately learned from?" Anyone want to embarrass themselves first?
Oh man,
I was a great intern. I was gonna make sure I put that out there
like
first.
a job or biggest mistake. Ooh.
I didn't feel like I could make mistakes, so that was a hard one.
We were
for me.
perfect.
Yeah. I have one little one. I do have one little one. I remember one of my first internships, they asked me to summarize these short stories. I summarized them. I then also gave personal opinions on why I thought they were good and bad. And then I also added who might be good for each one because I wanted to do extra. I was then told that that's not what they asked me. That's more than they asked me for, and I didn't need to do that. Ultimately, I didn't think that was a good fit for me as a place. However, I do remember at that point thinking, okay, let me listen more I did what they asked, I just did more. But I took that and thought in the next place, let me do what they asked, and then let me just kind of leave it there and maybe ask follow-up questions if I feel eager to add on to that, which I found that by asking the follow-up questions, it engaged me with the executives more than I think I normally would have been and got them thinking about some things they didn't. So it still was kind of bad, but then also good. Because you can't afford to fail when you start out. You just need to not.
Can't afford it. That's why I can't remember anything bad, because if I did, I know it would have been that big, because it was crazy, especially for us.
When you mess up, you try to keep it quiet. I just remember I was a PA at this place in Santa Monica. So we were at the pier in Santa Monica, and I was supposed to be taking something to set that was in Los Feliz. And I didn't realize that the freeway was right there. And I was taking Santa Monica Boulevard all the way to Los Feliz. And they were wondering, why is this stuff taking so long to get to set? So I just had to clean it up. But yeah, I just learn your environment. That's what I did not know. When I found out the 10 was right there, it was a whole new world.
I to echo Karen and learning your environment, I was trying to shadow an editor. I was working at a news network, and she let me go into one of their editing bays, and I took it up for hours, and I ended up having the bureau chief coming in saying, no, we actually need this for breaking news. So that was not really knowing that I was there to help and not take over their editing bays. That was
But we didn't mess up too bad because we survived.
Yeah, those are the stories out of the people that aren't on this call. Yeah.
I mean, look, I will say this, as having had interns, if you say you're going to come, you should actually show up. I'm going to put that out there. Yeah.
First step.
Great step.
All right. So our next question, Karen, this one may be geared a little bit more towards you, but if someone is interested in directing animation, what are some entry-level positions or training programs they should look at?
Interesting. And this is somebody I'm assuming that has not studied animation. I would say the question sounds like they're not wanting to go to the animation school and actually learn, because there's obviously many, places that you can learn from the beginning up. I would say, though, I have been looking for out-of-the-box places to find directors. As I mentioned earlier, I have hired a live action director. I also really look at writers, so really, the skill of directing is either going to be from like one of those animation, disciplines, that you're an animator, you're a story artist, and again, you can go to school with that, or you're the person that can really, like a live action directors, hold the whole movie in your head from a storytelling. I mean, really, story is probably the most important thing in animation in some ways, because it's all about that, and you've got these incredible artists that can help you derive that. So I would say, again, there's no silver bullet and how to do that. If you're feeling a calling of directing, and again, I call on Matthew Cherry, like he just did it. He just had an idea and he wrote something into and willed it into existence. So you'll know whether that's something that you need to do. And if you really do feel like, well, I feel like I need to express it out of drawing, or an animator is very much like an actor in terms of how much they perform it, then you're in for a long school process, but do it, because there's nothing like that if you want to be that close to it.
Thank you so much. I think we have time to wrap it up with one question, and then Jai, you can close it out. And the last one, I think, will kind of help some people in general if they're looking for more knowledge. But what are some books you would recommend to learn more about the industry? And I'll open that up even beyond books. Of course, we kind of know the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, but what are some places that we should maybe look to gain our information about the industry as a whole?
I'll say one of the first books I read was called So You Want to Be a Producer, because I wanted to be that, and one of my teachers recommended it. And knowing little at the time, I found it very, very helpful. Now, though, I mean, I read the trades, obviously. I read the news and I talk to other people. I mean, really, this is a business of connections, and that's really where you learn what's going on.
And I would say, yeah, the trades and just kind of following people's careers is probably a really good way, because then you'll find the various paths that people, find their way around, and you'll see what worked and what didn't work, or how unusual it is. I think that's probably really important now, because there's so much entrepreneurial efforts right now in the business that I think really kind of getting inspired by how the paths are varied is a good thing to know.
I agree with all that.
Okay. All right. Well, we have a couple more minutes. Maybe we can do one more quick question and then I'll wrap it up.
Cool. All right. Let me see. Let me grab one more. Ooh, I like this one. It actually just came back in. I guess this is a little different than the intern question. But if you could go back to the beginning of your career, what piece of advice would you give yourself, or what would you do differently?
I would have studied the people who were successful more, like the people in the departments. I think early in my career, I was just like, who do I connect with, and like who's like me, and I clustered with them, whereas I wasn't looking at like, who's really like winning here and who's being successful, and like studying like what they're doing and the tactics that they're using for me.
Anyone else? Anything you would do differently?
Advice for your younger self.
So many things, track people a little earlier and see what they're doing. In the beginning, read a little bit more. Like I read a lot, but maybe more. Like you can always read some more. Really, when you hold firm to some ideas, like there's some things when I was younger, I just didn't have the confidence to do that somebody else did a version of, like holding true to that. And just being, I think for me, believing a little more in myself and my taste earlier on.
And I'm gonna echo everybody else on this too, but I'm also add, like, it's hard to, and now I'm feeling another quote from Steve Jobs. It's hard to connect the dots, obviously, going forward, but it's easier to connect the dots going back. And I feel like everything that I did in the past led me to where I am now. So it's easy. It'll be like, I think that's why it's hard for me to actually answer this, because there's a part of me that's like, even when I was going in the direction I thought I wanted, something drove me to learn something else, or pick up something else, or meet somebody else along the way that changed my path. So, and all of that helped me to get to where I am now. So it's kind of hard for me to kind of want to change something in the past, because I feel like it's almost like those movies where like you keep going back, and every time you change something that's going to happen in the future. And I don't think I would be here right now if it wasn't for all the experience of failings and success that I had from when I was young in this business to where I am now. That's why I think it's hard for me to totally mentally think of what would I change now. I don't know if I would change anything.
Well said.
Hey.
Awesome. So that wraps up tonight's roundtable. I want to thank all of our amazing speakers and panelists. You guys were amazing, and thank you for sharing your story and your insight. And thank you all for joining us today as well. Sorry if we weren't able to get to your question. We had a ton of questions, so apologies if we weren't able to get to them. But thank you all for joining, and we will definitely be following up via email with everyone who participated, and hope to see everyone again at our next event. Thank you, guys.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks, Jaya.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.